Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Counsel Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Laurie.
Here.
Counsel Martin.
Here.
Counsel Mendonça.
Here.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Counsel Nuam.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize Council Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chambers for Sally Burke. I think most people in the city knew the Burke family through the store on Market Street. She was the widow of Nathan Burke. She was survived by her sons, Lenny and Richard, her daughter, Sifra and Roz, and several grandchildren. She was also predeceased by 2 children, Peaches and Charm. The Burkes owned Burke's Variety Store in Lowell for many, many years, and I'm sure just about everyone in the city had probably been in there at one time or another, and just a wonderful woman. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd please rise in a moment of silence in darkened chambers. The city clerk's portion of the agenda, we have minutes of the city council meeting December 18th for acceptance. Motion to accept and place on file by Council Mendonça, seconded by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Under city auditor's portion of the agenda, we have communication. Review of chapter 15 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Personnel. Any discussion? Motion to accept and place on file by Council Mendonça.
And to refer to the Finance Subcommittee. This topic has already been referred to the Finance Subcommittee, so just add this as background information.
Sure. Motion to accept and place on file and refer to the subcommittee. So moved by Council Mendonça, seconded by Council Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next we have the city manager's portion of the agenda. Communication from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Any discussion? Councilor Elliott.
We get a report, Mr. Manager, the city manager's neighborhood initiative for the Lower Highlands in Cambodia Town, and there's some good stuff done. Could we, some of it's not complete, but I'm just curious how much is being spent over in that area. Is it all block grant money?
Most of it's block grant money that we allocate to the program. In Centerville, Lower Highlands, Back Central, and now in the Acre, East Pawtuckaville area. And then there's some Chapter 90 money that goes in for the street improvements.
You probably have even given us a report at some point, but we saw this.
We can do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going through my paperwork here. I noticed a couple of motions I put in. One was for the residential parking in the acre, and we did get a report back that the DPD doesn't feel it's necessary right now. But I do appreciate them doing the work. I think as the college expands into the acre over the next couple of years, we may be seeing some issues with parking. I was just trying to head it off and be a little bit proactive. But right now, it seems things are fine. But I'm glad the work was done. And if we do have problems in the future, I think they'll be fine. There was another motion I did get back, and that was for the statement to the judges from the city. And I appreciate the Lowell Sun, the story last week. We've had some issues here in the city, as all communities do, and people just seem to go and come out of court. And I had put in a motion that the city make a statement on behalf of the people and the neighborhoods. And the police department did contact the DA's office, and it appears that we can do it on some of the major cases. I don't know if we'll be able to do it on some of the minor cases, but to know that we can do it, and it's just one step that the city's doing basically all it can through its police department. We'll be working with the law department on the statement that we're doing at least all we can, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, just to Councilor Laurie's comments about the parking, we will continue to monitor the situation. Hopefully, the new garages that are being built, the one on North Campus as well as the one that's going up right now on South Campus, should help alleviate many of those issues. But we will continue to monitor that.
Well, the reason, another reason for the motion, I'd come on the council just as the managing initiative in Back Central, and parking is really an issue over there, and some of the things the city did, and we worked with some of the businesses I know on Central Street for 2 and 1 hour parking, so I figured while the program was in progress, it'd be a good time to look at it. So, you know, right now they don't think it's going to be needed, but as we progress and the impact, your impact area is in project is going on, at least we know we have it, and if it has to be enforced, at least we're protecting the integrity of the neighborhoods as the university expands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the victim impact statement things that Councilor Lowell spoke of, I know that by law, the judge have to take into account the victim impact statement because by law. However, if we were to pursue to have, the court consider the city impact statement, then we ought to somehow push, go through our state delegation to make it a law. Therefore, require the judge to consider not only impact statement to the victim, but also to the city financially and otherwise. Along that, let me ask the manager with regard to the questions that Councilor Elliott spoke of, the Cambodian town. Can you give us are we on schedule on that Cambodian town, Mr. Manager?
Well, I would say that we're on schedule in terms of we're continuing to move forward to implement it. It would have usually the neighborhood initiative, the concept of the neighborhood initiative program is that we're in and out in a 12-month cycle. The Cambodia town is a longer-term project that got its start. Really, it started through the MIT study that was done in that neighborhood, and that was followed up during the neighborhood initiative implementation phase. While we've moved on to, actually we've moved on to Back Central and now into the East Pawtuckaville and acre area, we're continuing to push forward with the Cambodia town implementation, and I see that as something that really won't be ending so much as constantly evolving as we go through it. I don't know if Mr. Bakey has anything to add to that. We continue to reach out to businesses in that section of the city. We continue to, I know that I had a conversation with a member of the Cambodian community regarding some public sculpture that could be put at a location in the Lowell Highlands neighborhood in what would be considered Cambodia town. I know that we're talking about making some traffic signal improvements out there that may seem like a small thing that we want to blend in with the same color scheme of the area. We've put some banners up. We're looking to put more signage up. So it's going to be constantly evolving, and not really just by the city, but by the members of of that particular area to continue to participate.
So from what you said, the timeline of April 2013 is not really the timeline because it's more like an ongoing.
I would say it is more of an ongoing, right?
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Noon, I think, picked up something on that letter that was addressed with the DA's office in the city. in actuality, we can put an impact statement in, but I was talking earlier with the law department and a few others, and I'm not ready to put in a motion yet, but there could be a motion next week, as early as next week or the week after, and really to ask the delegation to, if we could expand that law, or at least have the law looked at and reviewed in Boston. But before I do that, I'd like to talk to the delegation. I just don't want to send them a letter and something that can or can't be done. So that is actually being looked at to be expanded, but I'd like to talk to the delegation first and get their concerns and feedback, and then possibly I may be putting another motion down the line, really just to have that law looked at, and if we could expand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the communications? Councilman Donza.
Yes, one of the items we received was a response to Councilor Kennedy's motion regarding the real estate tax bills. It can be a complicated issue to get into the details of, but I was just looking at some of the numbers and trying to understand them. They did break it down by the different residential classes in the commercial and industrial. And one of the things I was looking at was that the average change for a single family was an increase of $42 for the year. Some, like the condos, the average change was down $4. Two-family is up $55. Three-family, was down $173 on average. Again, that's the average, so there'll be many that had less than that and many that had more. The multifamily was up $522 on average, and they didn't have the numbers for the commercial and industrial. But I was looking at some of those numbers in the sense that the properties that were decreased in assessment were still increasing in the average bill that they paid by about 0.5%. So even and it wasn't that large a number. There was only one in each, or maybe, I'm not sure how accurate that is, that increased in assessment, one for commercial, one for industrial, that shows an increase of 8.5% each. And the remaining properties, which is the vast majority of the commercial and industrial, went up 1.42%. I did add up the residential, and the net increase is $1 million, which is only a part of the new growth. So I'm assuming that some of this increase that, especially in single-family homes, have seen were because they did work on their homes to expand it or improve it, or that the actual value changed because of sales in the neighborhood, and there should be some going down as well. Just if the manager wants to speak to some of this, because, I mean, we will get calls, and some of us already have, about, gee, I thought taxes weren't going up, but my single-family home, my tax bill went up. I mean, not by much, double digits, maybe $30, $16 on the bill, but still, there are people that didn't expect it to go up, and it is going up.
We've only had a couple of, I'm going to have Mr. Moses speak to Mr. Mayor. We've only had a handful of calls so far. In fact, most of the feedback we've been getting is people very pleased to see the tax bill and to see it go down or stay the same. And we've been able to explain to them how the process works. And I think most people in the community do understand that the tax is related to their value, and the values can shift, and one neighbor can go down while another one goes up, but together they stay about the same. Growth is a big part of what we're seeing here happening with many of these, and we have the new growth that happens as a result of new properties being developed, but growth also includes people that make improvements to their homes, that their value goes up as a result of that, and that's captured not just in an assessed value, but also in a portion of that goes towards new growth, because the total valuation of the city increases as a result of that new development. I don't know if Mr. Moses.
Yeah, I tried to give the council an additional resource on my cover memo. What I tried to do is present an average figure for growth in each of the categories. So if you look at single family, as you mentioned, the average single family home went up $42. Well, about half of that, $19, was due to growth in the single family category. The rest of it was due to valuation. Single families held their value relative to other properties well. And I had done that for each of the categories. It's a generalization because not all single-family homes had any growth. In fact, probably a minority of them did. But that would account for a lot of the change in taxes. So houses that didn't have any growth were much more likely to get closer to a zero increase.
Okay, so people should look at their bill, and if they haven't had any work done on their homes, which would account for some of the increase, but then compare the actual assessment this year versus last to see if the value has changed, because if it has increased, then it's likely that's the reason why their bill has gone up.
That's correct, and it doesn't take a whole lot of work on a house to have an impact. You can put on a porch that may add a few $1,000s in value, and at our tax rates, it may not wind up being a huge addition in taxes, but when tax changes are so low, it can actually make a big difference. So everybody who pulled a permit to put on a porch or to reside their house or did something with a pool or a garage, renovations on the inside, upgraded their electricity, these are all things that can add value to a house.
Okay. One of the things mentioned in the assessor's memo was that one of the things that can affect valuation, not valuation changes, maybe a shift in the levy includes, she mentioned property becoming nonprofit. And my guess is there that if we lose that property from the tax rolls, then we still have the same levy. So everyone pays a small portion of that, whoever remains as a for-profit or is not nonprofit. But I don't think there was a significant change, and maybe if there are any, if you could provide the council with the list of properties that would make, if there are any, if there aren't a significant number, then it's not worth it. But if it did cause a shift, then maybe identify some property turnover that caused it to go nonprofit, and therefore the values to be shifted to the rest of the levy.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any large ones. Obviously, we've had large ones in the past, but
Just in the past year, of course.
right. I can't think of any large ones. There may be a handful of small ones that have happened to, but nothing comes immediately to mind.
Okay. Well, thank you for the enlightenment. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the communications? Councilor Kennedy.
So what you're attributing the average increase to is home improvements and a change in the market?
Correct. It could
Is
be, right.
Both saying correct?
There could be lots of factors. There can be home improvement. There could be the relative change in values in markets. For example, single-family homes did better than three families. So three families went down more, single families went up. I don't know, but there's a possibility there may be relative strength in certain neighborhoods. That type of thing can affect.
It's still curious, isn't it, that, I mean, if you consider the home improvements that were probably made during the past year, certainly less than half of the properties had some kind of improvement, right? It would be a small amount. And I'm not sure that more than 50% of the homes, single-family homes, would have increased in value. And so for the average to go up is curious, isn't it?
I can make this really simple at a very gross summary level. We have a levy of roughly $100 million. We had new growth of approximately $1.3 million. That's 1.3%. So the average increase in a tax bill is 1.3% due to growth. So if somebody's bill was $3,000, $30 of that, 1%, could be accounted for by growth. So that's a view from 30,000 feet.
Right.
Any further discussion on the communications? Councilor Elliott.
And I understand all of this, but it gets frustrating, and I think that's why we get emails when the newspaper or statements are made that there's a zero tax increase, and then people get their bills and they see an increase. So I think we have to be careful to say, well, we're not going to raise, and maybe be a little bit more clear or add a caveat. If you had a home improvement, you may see an increase. Because people come up to me, and I'm sure my colleagues, and say, well, we read and heard zero increase. Not going to be any tax increases this year, yet my bill went up. Now, I understand it's because there are some fluctuations, or property values do change from time to time, but people at home may not. So I think moving forward, and it's not easy, I understand that, but people want to be told the truth. If they hear zero tax increase, they want to see zero. And, moving forward, we just have to be careful that people know that.
Mr. Manager.
Counselor, I agree. It's that it's a challenge to do that. I mean, this is an issue that has been really taking place here across the Commonwealth for the past 30 some odd years since Proposition 2.5 itself went in. That people think that a community goes out and says, okay, and this obviously is the majority of communities. It's 90% of communities say, we're abiding by 2.5%. We're not going up 2.5% this year. We're going up 2.5%. We're not going up. We're not seeking an override or whatever. And there's an assumption that taxes are only going to go up 2.5%. Lowell, actually, it's actually a great example though this year where we went up 0%. In our levy, but we see people's values changing all over. We see people's tax bills doing different things. Some went down, some went up. And it illustrates perfectly your point that there has to be, it would be helpful if there was a way to get that clarity that the 0% doesn't mean that everyone goes up 0%, because we're required by law to revalue every property every year, albeit not a full revaluation like we do every 3 years, but a market change. And so that's the natural effect, is that a ranch in Pawtucketville is going to go up some amount, whereas a ranch in the Highlands may not. And the values are a way to apportion out the tax burden, if you will, but it is, and as long as values are going to change because the market changes, we're going to have something like that happen. So it is a challenge, and it would be helpful if we could get that out, and we will continue to strive to do that. But I think you're right on working towards that clarity.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the communications? Entertain a motion. Excuse me, Councilor Elliott.
Well, we didn't receive a communication, but we all have been receiving communications via email, and this is regarding the computers, Mr. Manager, at the library. And I'm pretty sure you were CC'd on some of these emails. Well, I got a number of them, and I did see my colleagues on them as well. Can you tell us what is going on? One email was of concern to me, and we haven't met in a while, so, but I think it's important to bring this up to find out what is going on with access to those computers at the library for level 3 sex offenders. And is that logbook, because that was one of the criteria, according to the solicitor, this would be the best way. Is that logbook being enforced, people being required to sign in and sign out of that logbook? And according to these emails, they're not. And this, at least one particular individual has been seen in more than one occasion on that computer and accessing pornography, and that was not part of the policy that was put in place. So seeing email after email, is measures being taken? I hope measures are being taken to address it. And I was concerned, and I don't know if you, and I'll send you the emails if you haven't seen them. I presume that you have. That a computer that was being used was removed, and that a police officer wasn't allowed to access it too. So I know I asked you 3 questions. Can you answer those?
Sure.
Please.
I have not, I've only seen one email. There was so I'd be curious to see the other ones. There was, to my knowledge, the logbook is being utilized. That's the first I've heard that it wasn't. That we did have an incident where an individual was on a computer. It was identified that the site that he was looking at would be considered pornography. The staff followed the procedure, reported to the assistant director who had confronted the individual and told him he had to shut off the computer and he had to leave. And he could not come back until the process was followed. And the computer was shut down, and it has since been removed from and is sitting in the director's office. If there's any need to try to access it in any way for any other purpose,
Okay. Now, this individual, in my opinion, shouldn't be allowed in the library again, because those are the rules, and the rules have been broken. And to my understanding, it happened more than on one occasion. This person was seen regularly in there. But be that as it may, is there a meeting between this individual and the law department to allow him back into that library?
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
Is there a meeting where he has to meet with the law department before he goes back into that library?
He is not allowed in the library at this time, and there is a procedure that needs to be followed, a due process procedure that needs to be followed, and the law department is working on that, and that will go through. And if it's deemed that he's in violation of the policy, he will not be allowed back in the library. But obviously, just like in any other legal proceeding, there's due process that has to take place.
Okay. Thank you.
Council Mercy and then Council Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, I have a letter here from an individual that is concerned that everything that is being said is not being followed. We have rules in place. We've established rules since the last time that we had a major incident there. Procedure is not being followed according to eyewitness people that are there. And people that are sex offenders are coming in. Names of the people are here. I'm going to submit this letter as part of the record, and I would ask, Mr. Manager, that you follow up on this. People are coming in off the street that are sex offenders, that are irritating customers, patrons of the library, people that work there, being very belligerent. And when the police, which is only a stone throw away, should be called to come over, they're not. Are we afraid at the library to send over a paper trail that the police are involved? Isn't that their job? Isn't that what they're supposed to do? And I'm going to submit this, and I want this corrected. This library over there is open to the public for their safety, for their pleasure to read, and not be afraid that people are coming in looking at pornography because the filters are not working there, and they're watching it on a Saturday morning when children are in there. They're not in school, they're in the library. And I think this is wrong. And Councilor Elliott is completely right. We got emails, I got a letter. I want you to read this letter, and I want action taken, Mr. Manager. Thank you.
Well, if I may, Councilor, and we'll be happy to take that letter. This, again, this is, we've had, we have had that one incident that occurred. The policy has been working. People have been signing in. They've only been coming in certain hours as allowed under the ordinance. And, you know, this is, looking at this very quickly, this is the first I've seen of this letter. It is unfortunate that this is an anonymous letter. Now, I will say that I don't think that just because something comes through as anonymous means that it should be ignored.
It isn't
However,
anonymous to me. It's not anonymous to me.
okay, but it's problematic if these things aren't brought to anyone but you, Counselor. If they're not brought to us, that becomes an issue. Because we can't do anything if we can't get this ahead of time. And it is, you know, I will tell you that it says right here that, you know, these things are being ignored. I will tell you that they're not being ignored because the library director notifies me anytime there's a violation or anytime there's an issue that occurs there. And so they're simply not being ignored. You know, I'm not sure what else I can tell you about that other than the fact that the library staff there, but for a couple of members, I feel very comfortable with what we're doing there and have indicated such to me. So, but we'll follow up on this and we'll look into it and investigate.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I agree with Councilor Elliott. I don't really think they belong there, but the law says I guess they get so many hours a week. My concern is if the police are called by the library staff or the general public, I don't see why the public couldn't call the police if they wish. Do we have a policy in place where we can take a restraining order out on one of these people if we find them violating the regulations?
If the solicitor wants to weigh in on this, I'm more than happy to have her, but the policy is, or the ordinance states, that if someone violates this, they can, in fact, anybody, certainly if they're violating the ordinance, or they're violating the policies of the library, the code of behavior, they can be removed, taken out, you know, removed, you know, ordered from the library. People can be, just for violating general behavior policies at the library, they can be, you know, banned for a period of time or forever. Obviously, that has constitutional implications that we need to be cautious of. But we can do that, we have done that, and we will continue to do that for the protection of the library. You know, obviously, we need to ensure that people's rights are, you know, for instance, if I may, this letter, and I appreciate that Councilor Mercier knows who it is, but when you have anonymous letters coming through that make accusations about people, and it's assumed, and this is the first that they brought to us, and it's assumed that we're going to immediately respond with banning this individual. Imagine the world that we would be living in if people could just write letters, anonymous letters, about any one of us, and the result would be that they would simply, we would be banned from going places and being places. You know, I have, you know, the same concerns as all of you and the public at large, that we want the library to remain a safe place. We want every place to be safe. But there has to be a procedure that's followed, and we need to make sure that people's rights on both sides are protected. And, but again, you know, this is the first time I've seen this letter. I'm guessing it's the first time that it will have been seen by the library director, and we will follow up and see what happens.
I didn't receive a letter. I saw the email, and again, when people don't sign emails or sign letters, there's not much you can do. My question was more towards procedure. Now, if someone is going in there and violating the regulations, and a member of the general public calls the police, or the library staff calls the police, my question is, can we apply for a restraining order on that individual? I mean, we can ban whoever we want, but a restraining order at least has some strength in the law to it. And that's my question. If someone comes into City Hall and harasses an employee, we'll pull a restraining order on them. There's no question in my mind.
Correct.
So if we have a level 3 sex offender, or any of them, in the library that's violating the rules that have set up so they can use the computer, I don't see why we can't pull a restraining order on them and keep them out of the library. You know, that's my question. It's not, and I understand the emails weren't signed, but my question is for the future, for protection, can we get a restraining order on an individual for violating those rules? These people are usually on probation or parole to begin with, you know? If they're a sex offender, my guess they're probably more on parole and probation. So my question is, as we go forward in this debate, do we just look for restraining orders for the violators?
Madam Solicitor.
Sure. The level 3 sex offenders in the rules and regulations that the council put in place are such that, we could still, if appropriate, seek and obtain a restraining order on any one of the patrons under those circumstances. The way the ordinance is set up, if there is a perceived violation, there is a hearing established, and if there's a determination that there was a violation of any of the rules to any degree, the punishment is that individual completely loses library privileges, which effectively the ban should prevent them from coming back to the library. The ban, much like a no trespass order, a restraining order, could it be broken? Yes, but again, it is something that would be in addition in place to prevent somebody from coming in. And if they were in the library under those circumstances, a phone call to the police would immediately remove them from the library once there's a determination made. But in addition, we certainly could, if it was deemed to be necessary or appropriate, seek out a restraining order on an individual. It may be more in line of a no trespass order, but anyway, those measures could be certainly followed.
And that leads to my question. You know, if we ban someone for life for 1 year and they violate it, what happens to them? Nothing. But what's the penalty for violating the restraining order? At least in the eyes of the courts, that would have some teeth, and I'm sure especially where someone's either on parole or probation.
Right. Well, a couple of points. One, if somebody is banned from the library and then they show up in the library again, at that point, they're trespassing. They are in a place where there has been a legal determination that they shouldn't be. They're no longer like a member of the public who has a right to be there. So action could be taken on that. Secondly, I think part of what the library administration has tried to do in conjunction with this procedure is that when we do get information regarding, say, violations, if a violation occurred, is that there would be communication with the Mass State Sex Offender Parole Board so that they're aware of it. And you're right, those things will have an impact on the status of that individual and whether they remain on parole or not.
Thank you. You know, I understand we do have some procedures in place, and just for the, just to update them with debate, that was my question, and thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott, then Councilor Noon.
Council Mercy raised an issue, Mr. Manager. I don't think this is just one employee. We adopted a policy, and there is far too much detail in these letters for it to be anything but a pretty good chronology of what's taken place. And if you haven't seen emails, if your staff hasn't been telling you what's going on, this is not the first time in months. Because I have had other emails and with specific incidences and dates and times. I mean, there are police officers cited in this report. So the policy in place is not working because it's not being enforced. And I appreciate everybody has rights, but I think the rights of the people that want to go and use this library, that have done nothing but be good citizens, young kids, they supersede the rights of a level 3 sex offender. And if we have to impose strict requirements and, I mean, you know, restraining orders and things like that, that's fine, but you know what? They should be banned from the library. And they want to challenge us. They break the rules, they're not allowed back in, period. I don't know why we have to go through, and I'm not going to get off on this sidetrack. Councilor Mercy's right, this needs to be followed up, and those policies and enforcement and people in that library have to, you know, get a better grip on what's going on in those libraries, on those computers, especially on the first floor where the children's section is. Thank you.
Councilor New.
Thank you, Mayor. To follow up on Councilor Elliott, the part of follow up on these matters is, do we know that the what porn site this individual looking at, adult or child, or do we know any of that?
My understanding is that the individual was looking at a Facebook site, a Facebook page.
Was it a child? Was it a porn site?
My understanding is it was not a child.
All right.
Madam Solicitor.
Just because we're going to be having a hearing on this, I think if we certainly could present the council with a full report. I just don't want to have anything said that in any way compromises or creates a finding of fact that hasn't yet been determined until we have the hearing.
That's fine then. The other, since you're going to have a hearing, find out also whether or not this individual is on any supervision, probation, or parole on that. So thank you, Mr. Manager.
Councilor Kennedy and then Councilor Mendoza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Evidently, although there are procedures and rules in place, they aren't working, and that's why Councilor Elliott and Councilor Mercy are speaking about this tonight, and that's why the letter came. When you go to the library, if you want to use the computer, is there a procedure for using the computer? In other words, if I went over there this evening, would I just sit down at a computer and start using it, or do I have to sign in someplace? Do I have to show somebody my license? Are there any procedures for just using the computers over there?
I believe that anybody can go in and use the computers.
Okay.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Kennedy's first comments, that it's clear that the policies aren't working. That's opinion. That's the opinion of the person who wrote this letter. And clearly it's the opinion, or it seems to be the opinion, of Councilor Elliott and Councilor Mercier. Others who work at the library and believe it is working, and that in fact people are being kept out of the library at certain hours. People are being limited in what they can use, where they can go in the library, and when there are problems, people are being removed from the library. That is indicative of that the policy is working. But is it possible, like in this case, that someone may have wandered onto a site that the filter didn't pick up, or whatever the case may be? Possibly. And that needs to be looked at and proper actions taken. You know, like any law, we have situations where that arises, and then you follow the procedures set forth in the law, and you take corrective action.
Mr. Manager, I don't think there's a need to get defensive about what's going on over in the library or the procedures that are in place. I mean, obviously, it sounds like you have a lot of confidence in the policies that are in place. But I would suggest that we wouldn't be talking about it here this evening, nor would these communications have come if everything was okay. And all that Council Elliott or Councilor Mercier have asked you to do is to look into it, take a look at the policies, and find out whether or not they should be changed a little or tweaked a little so that they're more effective than what they are. On the face of it, just listening to the conversation this evening, it sounds like the policies could be improved upon. Now, a couple of years ago, I was in another state and in another city, and I used the public library there. And when I went to the library, I had to sign in to use the computer. It was a computer that I wanted. So when I got there, I had to sign in. I was given a ticket so that I could use a certain computer for a certain amount of time. And I think that if we had policies in place for just the use of the computers, the people who are a problem over there, if there are people who are a problem, they're a problem because of the computers. I don't think it's because of the books that are on the shelves, by and large. And so maybe the focus should be on the use of the computers, and maybe the use of the computers could be policed better than what it is, especially if it's not policed at all. And so that would be my suggestion, and along with Councilor Mercier and Councilor Elliott, I would await your report on this, but I would strongly suggest that you take a look at special policies and procedures for use of the computers over at the library.
Councilman Mendonça.
Yes, one of the communication I received was through the city's website to city councilors, and it was unfortunately, I think, anonymous. But one of the allegations in it, and so I just want to know if it's true or not and what applies to it, was that a police officer was denied access to a computer for the purpose of investigation. Maybe this computer that's been removed. And the second part of my question to the solicitor maybe is there an expectation of privacy when using like a public computer at a library? My initial thought is no, it's a public computer, therefore you can't expect the stuff on it to be private, but I just thought I'd let the solicitor weigh in. So my first part to the manager was just, if to your knowledge, was the police denied access to a computer?
Not to my knowledge. The police came over, they tried to get into the computer. There are limits to what you can get on in the computer, so that's why it was removed and put elsewhere pending any further information that might be needed to get off of the computer. But the system, and this may respond to the solicitor's question, but the computers are set up in a way so that if I was using a computer and I was looking at any number of things, not pornography, and Mr. Moses followed me, he couldn't see that I was, exploring job opportunities in Alabama.
Madam Solicitor.
There should not be any expectation of privacy with respect to the use of a public computer.
So the police officer certainly a legitimate use to investigate anytime they wish. There's no prohibition.
That's
right. There is a sort of a different environment with respect to a library. Same thing with the use of the books and things of that nature. That it would not all be public per se, unlike say the public workplace, but by the same token, certainly for criminal investigation and things of that nature, those computers would be public.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Council Leahy.
Thank you. Just on communications, if I could just ask the manager, I was just looking for a report on the motion I put in for Westview Road. So if you had any indication when that report might be done.
I'll follow up on that, Councilor, and see where that stands. I know that there was some work being done on that.
Any further discussion on the communications? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Councilman Johnson, second by Council Lori. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Being after 7 o'clock, we move to the general public hearings. First, we have the ordinance to amend Chapter 104, Animals. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilman Johnson, second by Council Lori. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Reading by title. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, as amended with respect to Chapter 104 thereof entitled Animals, Article 1 entitled Dogs, by striking out Chapter 104 Animals, Article 1 entitled Dogs, in its entirety, and substituting a new Chapter 104, Article 1, due to substantive changes. At this point, I'd open it up for those wishing. Councilman Donza.
Before that, there are changes to what's before us this evening. Just have the solicitor highlight what those changes are and then have the public hearing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Madam Solicitor. Attorney Fenton.
Thank you, councilors. First of all, let me just say that the ordinance was needed because of the fact that there were so many changes made to the general laws, Chapter 140, that in order to make it readable and understandable, we had to, in turn, revise our section of the code entirely. And the only way you could really do it and have it make sense would be to take out what's there and just substitute a whole new section on dogs. After we did that, and when we had subsequent meetings with the animal control officer and the hearing officer, there were a few changes that had to be made. And Chapter 104, Section 6, subsection I, was rewritten only because it was inconsistent with the requirements of the hearing officer's orders that may be issued, so we revised it in that section. The change was made to 104.93 in that we corrected a couple of typos, a misspelling in one instance, and the use of the term hearing authority instead of hearing officer, so we made that correction. Thirdly, Section 104.20, correction, there was a wrong reference to a statute. Should have been Chapter 51, Section 4, and instead it said 41, Section 4. So we made that correction. A significant change was made as to Section 104.22, which had to do with dogs fighting, and then also with dogs that in the presence of an officer attack a person or attack an animal. You know, what could the officer do? Well, if it was such that either the officer or a person in his presence was being attacked, he would have the right to shoot and to take such steps that was necessary to protect both the person and himself. Finally, not finally, but we did add also a requirement for a 3-year term for the Animal Advisory Committee, which is spelled out in Section 104.22-.7. And finally, the animal control officers talked about dog waste and the fact that the fine, which was then $10, was inadequate and it should be raised to $25. So we made that change as well. So those are the changes that were submitted to you for tonight. And those changes have been incorporated entirely into the revised revision that you received as well. So,
Thank you, Mr. Fenton. If there are no further questions, I'd open it up for a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? You please just say your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. My name is Dion Gegas, and I live on Chapel Street. I actually came across this serendipitously today. I went to register my dog, got his new license for this year, and I noticed this was on the agenda tonight. I want to first say that I read this completely from cover to cover. The one that was in the packet and it's very well-written. I think it encompasses a lot of the issues that we've encountered over the year with some aggressive animal behavior. I just did have a couple of questions, things that I wanted to point out, and I did find more typos, which I'd be happy to hand to Mr. Fenton so that he could incorporate them in his final revision. On the first page, you have a section called adoption, and you only talk about the dog or the cat as a pet, and I'm just concerned that maybe since this is under the animals section, I wanted to make sure we didn't exclude anything that might also need to be included, such as rabbits and other small animals. On page 2, under euthanize, I just kind of thought maybe it would be better wording than to take the life of an animal. It just is not as clear as to humanely terminate the life of an animal. One of the other things is under your definition of livestock or fowl. I'm not sure if it's mutually exclusive, but you have, at the end you said, shall not include a dog, cat, or other pet. But could we end up with a problem where somebody thinks a chicken is a pet? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And then lastly, he mentioned the penalty for dog waste. If it was possible, $25 still seems too light. I really think that if we could increase it to $50, that it might have an impact. That's the only other thing I saw. I want to thank everyone for putting in a lot of time, because you really did change the whole ordinance, and I think overall it's really a good proposal. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? In favor. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Any discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the work that has been put into this ordinance. I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to support it because it doesn't have protections, but I have concerns, and I have been since the new law was adopted regarding pit bulls. And on the last page, there is a paragraph specifically relating to pit bulls that, as defined, this ordinance is going to cancel and it's going to revoke that ordinance that we put in place. And if we recall, just over a year, maybe a year and a half ago, we spent a lot of time putting together an ordinance that other communities, other cities, like Boston and Lynn and so many other cities, put in place because there was a pit bull problem. And we had a pit bull problem. And by all accounts, the pit bull problem has been addressed. And I think the ordinance that was adopted, and we did even receive a report, has been effective. So to just completely obliterate it, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's fine in other rural areas where we don't have the population density, we don't have, real irresponsible pit bull owners. But for the city of Lowell, people were able to walk down the street. If you're in downtown, pit bull had to be muzzled, and it seems the attacks were gone. So while I appreciate this ordinance, I have concerns that it takes away rights and protections for people in the city that were attacked or, that had issues with pit bulls. And I think I hope it doesn't revert back. I know there are still stipulations in here, but I think the ordinance that was in place has worked, and we have seen the results. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? Councilor Martin.
I think the reason that we're even considering this is because there was state law passed that said you couldn't have ordinances directed at specifically at pit bulls or any breed. So to, and for better or worse, we're creatures of the state government. We're an entity of the state government. We're only allowed to do certain things within the laws that apply to us. And now this is one that applies to us. So to do nothing, I think we run the risk of having no protections or no dangerous dog ordinances, because if somebody challenged that existing ordinance, it's very well likely to be found in violation of this new state law. So this, I think, gives us the next best alternative. I agree there was a lot of work that went into the prior ordinance, and it would have been good if that could have been kept, but I don't think it can. And wishing it were otherwise doesn't make it be so. So I do appreciate the effort that's gone into this, and I think this is the best solution we can hope for under the circumstances.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I just had a follow-up question to Mr. Fenton or the solicitor. Have any other communities taken action on those communities that had pit bull ordinances? Have they adopted any other ordinances?
Well, first of all, the special act that was passed that basically said you can no longer have a breed-specific ordinance is in effect and became effective October the 31st. But I attended a seminar put on by the City Solicitors and Town Council Association, and of course the issues were raised as well, and all of them are following it and following it very strictly. I submit that I know of no city or town who has initiated any legislative action to change the elimination of breed-specific ordinance. And what this ordinance does, it does specifically create what's called a dangerous dog ordinance, rather a dangerous dog determination, which in turn is achieved only after a hearing before a hearings officer, wherein the facts are presented in the hearing officer, and we have Eder Matchik, of course, is our hearing officer. Then a determination and orders can be made with respect to the dog. It can be confined, it can be restrained, muzzled, insurance requirements, a microchip or other purposes of identification. It could be an order of neutering or even human euthanizing. So I think that, humanely euthanizing, I should say. But as I say, I know of no city or town who has initiated any legislative action to wipe out what this law provides, namely that there shall be no breed-specific ordinances.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Well, thank you, Mr. Fenton. My question was, have any other communities that had a breed-specific ordinance, have they adopted a new ordinance similar to what we're doing tonight, or are they just letting to see what happens?
No, I think everyone is initiating actions along that line, if they haven't already.
Okay, but we don't know. Okay,
Any further discussion?
thank you.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Madonza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
No.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have an ordinance to amend Chapter 140, Electrical Standards, and Chapter 150, Fees. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Leahy. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed or voted. Reading by title in City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 140 thereof entitled Electrical Standards, and Chapter 150 thereof entitled Fees. At this point, I'd open it up for a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? In favor. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Move for approval by Council Laurie, seconded by Council Martin. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Counsel Kennedy.
No.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendoza.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nolan.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
No.
7 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you. Next, we have a vote to accept Chapter 32B, Section 20. Entertain a motion to waive the full reading by Council Mendoza, seconded by Council Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Reading by title, in City Council vote, accepting Section 20 of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B, as amended. And then open it up at this point. Mr. Manager, do you want to explain?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, this is, I think we certainly talked about OPEB for a number of years here, certainly since I've been city manager. OPEB refers to other post-employment benefits, and it became, it really should have been an issue that all levels of government were concerned with years ago, but it really only became an issue back in the early to mid 2000s when the GASB was 45 was issued by the Government Accounting Standards Board, which basically advised that government, be they state government or municipal governments, carry on their books and at some point in time establish a funding mechanism to deal with the issue of post-employment benefits, similar to the way the private sector does, so that there'd be some comparison. Otherwise, you have the risk that you essentially have if you don't show it on your books, if you don't acknowledge it, you have a ticking time bomb, which Massachusetts had back in the early 80s with its pension system. I would argue that that ticking time bomb exists in a number of other states across the country with their pensions, that they have not fully funded those moving forward, and they just essentially kick the can down the road until they become insolvent. Certainly, I think that's taken place with a number of municipalities in California. There are states that have run into this as well. Massachusetts did take the bull by the horns, though, in the 1980s. They did put in place a funding mechanism whereby pensions would be put on a full payment schedule, so that every community right now has to be fully funded by the year 2034. They moved it up from 2028 to 2034. Post-employment benefits are potentially even more dangerous. And what they are is essentially health care costs. And we all know what health care costs are doing, particularly as the population ages. These are growing to be an ever-increasing portion of city, town, and state budgets. And GASB 45 required that we start to book these on our financials, which we've done. In our case, the liability for the city of Lowell is about at the last actuarial analysis, was about $689 million, which is essentially, 2.5 times our annual operating budget. Unless we start to take the bull by the horns in controlling those costs, which I think we have certainly with going into the GIC and accepting Section 21, which came as part of joining the GIC, where we have retirees, future retirees, actually every eligible retiree right now join Medicare. Those have certainly helped control the costs, and hopefully we'll see the benefits of that in our next actuarial analysis. However, it doesn't solve the underlying problem that we are not setting money aside for these retiree health costs that will be coming in the near future. So right now there's a special commission here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that's looking at how we can basically do here in Massachusetts for healthcare costs, retiree healthcare costs, what we did for pension costs. And that's coming down the road where there'll probably be some type of funding mechanism put in place. But what what communities are doing, legislation was filed back in, I think it was 2005 or 2006, perhaps 2007, that allows communities to start to establish funds that they can utilize to set money aside for, similar to the way we set aside money in our pension system, so that when those costs hit us a few years down the road, we will have money to fall back on. Now, you know, all this does, what you have before you is accepts that portion of the statutes, accepts that statute that allows us to set up the fund. I think I've made it very clear that it's the administration's intention to try to fund that in some way in the future with the opportunities that comes with the closeout of the health insurance trust fund. We don't know the exact amount on that yet, but it could be several $1 million that could go towards that $689 million problem. You know, so we could do that, and I think we should do that, like a number of other communities here in the Commonwealth, even nearby. Some of our neighboring communities have done this already. That would set the city up well for the future. The alternative, of course, is to not do this and not put any money aside and essentially leave it for subsequent generations to deal with, subsequent city councils and administrations to deal with. So those are really the choices that we have. Setting up the fund, well, what we're looking for tonight is just to set up the fund, and then we'll deal with the funding issues at a subsequent meeting.
Thank you. At this point, then, we'd open it up for a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We'd open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Wish of the council. Councilor Kennedy.
I'd like to move we delay action for 1 week.
Motion by Councilor Kennedy to delay. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Martin.
As I understand the rule, this already is delayed a week. Is that correct? This is accepting a state statute. We conduct the public hearing, and then that's it. The vote's next week,
I believe
right?
that's the case.
That was changed under the Rules Committee, I believe, that instead of having to wait the extra week, it's all done in one evening. I can double check that though for you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Kennedy.
if I could, I'm just asking for a week delay because we just got the report on this last night, right? Or yesterday afternoon.
I
is
said
when
it out last night.
Yeah.
Many councils already, this has been passed out before, but I understand, Council, you're new to the council, so.
Right.
Yes.
So I'd just like a week to go over it. I mean, I'm sure there's no problem with it, but I still would like an opportunity to look it over.
Any further discussion? Councilor Mendoza.
I assume we can still ask questions this evening.
Sure.
Just voting on it next week. I mean, some of the material we did read was that we're essentially in a pay-as-you-go mode right now. What is the current annual cost in our current budget or the 2014, say?
For retiree health
For this post-employment benefits?
Well, with a certain portion that goes for retirees, there's none that's being set aside for future post-employment benefits. So as what happens over time is that number is, if you go back and you looked at, and I don't have the number right off the top of my head, perhaps Mr. Moses does, but if you look and go back and say, okay, when the city made the decision, the very generous decision back in the 1970s to include retirees, the cost was very small, because there were very few retirees that qualified, and then over time there were more, and there were more, and there were more. And it's only a matter of time, demographics being what they are, that there will be more retirees on a health insurance plan than active employees. And there's also the issue that that's where most of your health costs go. So.
And I can be more concrete. Our budget on the city side of the budget is $24.5 million. Of that, we fund not only the city side retirees, but the school side retirees. Approximately, and you'll find this number on page 4 of the OPEB report in your packet, approximately $14.6 million relates directly to retirees of that 24.5.
Wow. And, well, that's a substantial number, and it's only going to get bigger going forward, I believe, according to the table.
That's correct.
So what this would allow us to do going forward is we'd still have that annual cost, but we could put money in here so that it could be invested and generate earnings that could help pay these costs instead of having every dime come from the taxpayer.
That's correct.
But it will involve a little pain up front, except in the case when we have maybe like this leftover trust fund money that we could put into here to start making those earnings. According to the table, as far as the actual aerial tables go, how large a liability in any one year, how big does it get?
The table doesn't indicate that. We do have a current cost roughly of $14.6 million. I don't believe that the report, I'd have to, well, I do have that. The normal cost for the pay-as-you-go in 2042, for example, would be about $77 million, up from 14.5. Now, admittedly, that's in 30 years.
But still, that's going to come out of the budget, which right now is roughly a quarter of our current budget. Naturally, our budget's going to grow over time, but it's going to grow because of this, and we have really no choice but to fund this one way or another. To me, it seems to make prudent sense to invest some funds to help pay some of these costs. And of course, these will change over the years. One of the things I did notice about the actuarial report was that it was done in 2010, prior to I changing the GIC and all of the other factors. So it might behoove us to generate another report in the coming year that so that we know where we stand with our current insurance programs.
It is required that we update this on a regular basis. I think it's every 2 years. So that is due to be, in fact, Mr. Moses already sought quotations to do this actual analysis. I think I don't know if we want to say it, but I will anyway. What we think is it might knock down, going to the GIC might knock it down by 15 to 20%.
Which would be good, but still, 15% is $74 million.
Right.
It still leaves a substantial amount to be paid by the taxpayer.
Correct.
And we're going to need to handle that at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Again, we have a motion to delay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have, under the utility public hearings, pole location for National Grid, Verizon New England Incorporated, request to set one new pole at 945 Middlesex Street. I'd open it at this time for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I entertain a motion to refer to the wire inspector for report and recommendation. So moved by Council Laurie, seconded by Council Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Returning to the manager's portion of the agenda, we have a communication report and recommendation from the planning board regarding proposed amendment extending the RR zoning district to include the parcel located at 228 Plain Street. It's in a motion to accept and place on file by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the ordinance to amend zoning for 228 Plain Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Mercia, seconded by Council Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Zoning by extending the existing regional retail zoning district to include the entirety of 228 Plain Street in Lowell, which is presently zoned traditional two-family. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The previous communication was from the planning board, who held a public hearing on November 19th to review this very ordinance. And according to their report and recommendation, which was previously before us just a minute ago, no one spoke in favor of this request. Not even the people that are asking for it didn't speak in favor. 4 people spoke in opposition, and the planning board denied the proposal based on 3 particular issues by which we're all aware of, and the vote was unanimously voted to deny. So now we're faced with this ordinance to do the very thing that the planning board denied. So having said that, I don't want this to be viewed as something tricky that we're going to take a roll call and vote for this, because I'm certainly not voting for this, because it is to amend the zoning from a traditional two-family to RR, and I'm not supporting that. Let me just say that people much more knowledgeable than myself, with the title of planning board people on the committee, they voted to deny this. They know more about the rules than I do, and I value people's recommendations. So having said that, and they brought the report and recommendation previously before us, which we place it on file, I'm voting no on this particular ordinance.
Okay, we still need to set a public hearing, but Mr. Bakey?
We do?
Just thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify the procedure here. As with other zoning amendments, there are actually 2 public hearings that are required before a zoning amendment can be adopted or formally rejected. One is before the planning board, at the conclusion of which the planning board provides a written recommendation to the council, which is what you received. However, the planning board does not have the authority to enact or reject zoning. Only the city council does. Before the city council can take that vote, the city council needs to separately hold their public hearing. Now, in some cases, you can do it jointly, but at this point in the process with this one, what needs to happen this evening is that this amendment, regardless of what one may feel about it, needs to be referred to a public hearing before the council can act on it.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Forget what I said previously then, but...
So I'd entertain a motion then to set the public hearing for February 5th at 7 p.m. So moved by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a vote authorizing the manager to lease 11 parking spaces at the Leo A. Roy Municipal Parking Facility to the United States government. Councilor Leahy.
Excuse me, I just had a question. What was the date for this ordinance again, the past?
That would be February 5th.
Okay, how come so far out?
What's that?
How come so far out? How come we wouldn't take this up next week? Oh, it's 2 weeks.
Mr. Clerk.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, there's advertising that we have to do on a part of the clerk's office, and statutorily, we need the time to properly advertise it, Council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a vote. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council vote. Authorizing the city manager to lease 11 parking spaces in the Leo A. Roy Municipal Parking Facility to the United States government. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Councilor Mendonça.
This is an annual renewal now? They just do this every year, correct? Thank you.
Councilor Laurie.
Just a quick question. They're going to pay, what, $65 a month? What's the normal rate that most?
That is the normal rate.
I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen. Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have a vote to authorize the city manager to enter into a lease agreement with Fortune Wakefield LLC, care of Farley White Management Company for property located at 660 Suffolk Street, the Crime Analysis Unit. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Mercier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or voted in city council vote. Authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell to enter into a lease agreement with Fortune Wakefield LLC, care of Farley White Management Company LLC, with a principal place of business at 155 Federal Street, Suite 1800, Boston, Massachusetts, 02110, for property located at 660 Suffolk Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Noon. Any discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Mr. Manager, could you just explain this, as just a brief explanation as to
Sure.
what we're doing here and how much, what the cost is?
Yeah, this is for space at the Wanderlands Mill. This goes back, it's got to go back 10 or 15 years now that the city has leased space over there from Farley White for our crime lab. You know, obviously, there's specialized space that's needed for that. And it wasn't available in the police station. It's fully built out now. Having said that, we put this out to bid. They were the only ones that bid. The lease payment remains essentially the same as it had been in the prior term, where we had actually, I believe we'd gone down a couple of years ago, where we were able to get that negotiated down. But that's what its use is for.
And this comes out of the regular budget, this $14,175?
I believe
Per year?
Yes. Again, it goes back 10 or 15 years now.
Because there's no lack of space, is that what it is? Is this grant funded, is it?
No, I believe this is general operations, so the source of funds comes out of the annual budget, but there isn't space in the police station for this.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm going to support this. This is fine. My question is, the lack of space we really have here in the city. We look at JFK, the DPD's here, the city's growing, the departments are expanding, the police department is becoming much more complicated. The only concern I have is if we find the need to start breaking down police units around the city, and not the discussion to take up tonight, but maybe to figure out a way down the line how to put them under one roof.
Mr. Manager.
Which is basically a new station.
Right. Councilor, I think you make a good point. As I said to Councilor Elliott's question, this goes back a long time that we've been doing this. But it does underscore the issue that we don't have adequate space, and police work has become far more complex than it was, 40 years ago, 40 years ago when that station was built. DPD uses a portion of that building. The fire department uses a portion of that building. And I think long-term, we need to look at, those are the things we need to look at, is whether those buildings are sufficient, whether there's some type of alteration. Do we build a new police station and replace that one? Do we remove the fire department from that space and build a new fire station? I actually think that that's probably a more advisable course of action. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have the central fire station located in the middle of a complex like this. It should be out on a main road. It too is inadequate on a number of counts. Councilor Noon and I were discussing this actually just the other day about some of the deficiencies of that fire station. DPD is, they can move anywhere, but we need to look at our long-term facility needs, and it's that type of long-range planning and capital investment that needs to take place here in the city that hasn't necessarily taken place over the years. When you look at the JFK Civic Center, that goes back 40 years that's been there, and we have fire stations that are over 100 years old. And so we need to start looking at those long-term. And that's really where, over the course of the next several years, as we've been able to provide some financial and fiscal stability for the city, that we need to start investing in our capital, and we've made great strides in putting together a capital plan, but it doesn't really address the large facility needs like a new fire station, a new police station, or replacing fire stations, things of that nature, that the long-term health of the city requires that take place.
I know we have these small police stations, some of them around the city, and we're losing funding on that. But it's, you know, my concern of all departments to break down is the police department with public safety as we move forward and separating their units from one another. It was just when I saw this, that, of course, I'm going to support this, but when I saw it in the big picture, it was a concern, and I just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this lease agreement? Roll call, please.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin. Counsel Madonza.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have an order, 60-day trial. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council order. Pursuant to the Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, temporary traffic regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. So wish of the council? Move for approval by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Roll call, please.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Madonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have a vote to authorize the city manager to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Tewksbury, PJ Realty Incorporated, Rite Aid, and Long Meadow Golf Club. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Martin, seconded by Council Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Tewksbury, PJC Realty, Massachusetts Incorporated, Rite Aid, and Long Meadow Golf Club relative to the property located at 935 Andover Street, Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Council Laurie, seconded by Council Kennedy. Any discussion? Council Mendonça.
To the manager, I know I've asked this question previously, just to get it out in public. The Rite Aid Pharmacy, that property does not have an option to tie into Tewksbury Municipal Sewer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Present.
Excuse me.
Present.
Counsel Madonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have a communication, the appointment of Clifford Krieger to the License Commission.
Move approval.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have a number of appointments here before you tonight, and one that obviously was of significance to us and was somewhat of a challenge was finding a Republican to serve on our on our License Commission. And as you know, Dennis Tague served in that capacity for a few months, but needed to step down due to a move out of town. And that began a search for a replacement. And I had the opportunity, after some outreach, to interview a number of people and speak to a number of people. And in the end, I made the decision to bring to you tonight Cliff Krieger. Mr. Krieger comes with a extensive military background, but beyond that, he has a private sector background, but he also has exhibited the type of commitment to, in his discussions with me, to working to ensure that the liquor laws and regulations are adhered to in a way that is favorable for the license holders as well as for the public at large. And that was significant for me, and I think he has the proper demeanor and the proper skills to bring to this. So it's my pleasure to put his name forward tonight for the License Commission.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilor Kennedy to approve, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Kennedy.
I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Krieger regarding the appointment. I think it's a good appointment. He indicated to me, although the appointment is only until June, he indicated to me that he was interested in serving in the long term. And I guess that's what I would expect, is that if it all works well, that he would get reappointed. I was disappointed at first because I thought that this was just going to be a temporary appointment, there would be somebody else, and that Mr. Krieger had other plans for his time beyond June, but apparently that's not the case. And so, I'm happy to vote for this appointment. I also had an opportunity to speak to one of the other candidates, and that candidate interviewed with you, and when they interviewed with you, the only people that knew they were interviewing are the candidate's spouse, and you. Yet, maybe a short time after that, one of the local bloggers called that candidate to discuss their candidacy. Now, given the background and the fact that before I got here, but even it spilled over into the beginning of my term, there was quite a bit of discussion over confidentiality. How would it be that a local blogger would know who was being interviewed for the position?
I do not know.
Well, let me be more direct. Did you tell the local blogger that the person was being interviewed?
No.
And so you have no idea how that would happen. You have to imagine that the candidate would not have told the blogger, or else they wouldn't have been surprised by the call. And you have to expect that the spouse wouldn't have told, right? Well, do you think there's some sort of breach in your office?
I do not think so. I don't know how anything gets out into the media.
I don't consider that the media. It was a blogger. The blogger didn't necessarily put it on the blog. The blogger called the candidate before it was on any blog. It was not in the media. Nobody knew about it. The fourth person to know about it was the blogger.
I can't speak to that. I have no idea.
But you did have a discussion with that candidate about that incident.
With regards to how their name got out?
Yes.
We talked about it.
And did you come to any conclusion?
No.
All right, do you see that as being a problem? Do you see it as a problem that the bloggers would know, or a certain blogger would know who was being interviewed, but this city council wouldn't know who was being interviewed, and nobody is supposed to know who's being interviewed, and that the people who apply for these positions and go for interviews expect a level of confidentiality, and that if they get a call hours later discussing their candidacy, not just telling them that they knew about it, but also discussing the merits of their candidacy. Do you see where that's a problem?
Well, as you know, Councilor, I had issues with the whole notion of, for instance, releasing resumes of people, because there is a level of confidentiality that's out there. Now, in looking at candidates for any number of positions, I speak to any number of people and ask them to give me names if they know of anyone. That's a particular challenge with this one because it does require a Republican, and so I don't know people's party affiliation generally. I didn't go through the voting list to pick out every Republican, but I reached out to people and asked, and different names were given to me. And in the course of that, perhaps someone spoke to someone about that. I don't know. That could be how it happened. I really don't know how it happens. I prefer to keep things confidential. At the same time, if I'm going to check on people to, determine their qualifications or to seek candidates, names are going to start to be bandied about. So I don't know.
This particular candidate, it became public later on, and it appeared in the Lowell Sun, and it appeared in the blogs, and so, and I understand that stuff leaks out, and then it gets to the media. I mean, that's kind of the media's job, is to find out that stuff, whether it's confidential or not. That's part of the business. But it would not be a reporter's job, nor should it be a blogger's job, to call up a candidate shortly after they've been interviewed and discuss the merits of their candidacy. That's different from putting it in the blog. It's different from putting it in the newspaper. And I'm troubled by it. I don't know why you wouldn't be troubled by it.
Well, I am troubled by it, but you've asked me if I spoke to a blogger about that, and I told you no.
Any further discussion on this appointment? Councilman Johnson.
Just disclose, I serve on a board with Colonel Krieger.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Excuse me.
Councilor Mercia and then Councilor Elliott.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to disclose, too, that we have a dinner group, and Cliff is a part of that dinner group, and I don't want to be in trouble and not say that, so I want to disclose that. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to follow up on Councilor Kennedy's point, because I think it's a problem too. Seems like it's a trend that information lands on the blogs before it ends up in the hands of city councilors, Mr. Manager. Or even for that matter, Mr. Mayor, your blog page as well. Long before, or either shortly after the council agenda was put together, there was an article on your page, specifically a full article about this particular issue, before I even knew about it. So I think we need to make sure that it's the councilors that run the city, and that we get the information first, and residents should be entitled to get the information, but it just seems to me people knew about this appointment before councilors did. And I'm wondering how that story was on your page, Mr. Mayor, before any of the councilors knew it.
I'm not sure what story you're referring to, but I mean, that was public information by the time that story was posted.
Well, it's a pretty lengthy article, so it had to be written beforehand, is my point, which means your staff knew about it and apparently must have been in contact with the city manager, because they knew the selection was made well before the city council did.
Well, I'm not sure that that's...
Well, nobody seems to know how this information is getting out, yet those two offices right here are where the information comes from. So nobody knows anything?
I think in terms of the blogger who knew about the candidate, again, people, if I knew how, stuff got out into the media, whether it be social media or traditional media, I'd be a happier man. With regards to the blog posting on Friday that listed these, I believe the city clerk sends out the agenda to all the councilors as well as the media and anyone else that's on the distribution list. And on that agenda, it said, appoint Clifford Krieger to License Commissioner, appoint Eric Faulkner to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a simple process of, seeing the names and writing a blog, or writing a piece. And I mean, I don't think it went into any great detail. The one I read, I don't know if you read a different one, but the one I read was simply giving a little bit of background. I think everyone knows Mr. Krieger. Most people know the other people here too. And They know a little bit about them, and it's put out there, and the public benefits by that, I think.
Okay, Mr. Manager, my
If it was
point,
followed, by the way, Counselor, it was followed, I think. I didn't see the blog. I saw it in the Lowell Sun. And you don't seem to have an objection to the Lowell Sun having it in as breaking news.
Mr. Manager, I don't live online. Maybe you do. Maybe you're able to follow breaking news and the blogs, et cetera. My point was, and I'll bring you back, is that the protocol, the law, is that we are the governing body, and that your responsibility, and you, Mr. Mayor, is to communicate that information to us in the timely fashion. We are responsible for it. So I'd like to see the information beforehand, before it's in the media, before it's on a blog. Now, Council Kennedy brings up the point, and you don't seem to know anything about it, but you knew about the interview, the candidate and the spouse, and nobody else. Yet a blogger is calling that individual. That's wrong. You don't want to release resumes to the public, but you want to communicate with a blogger.
Counselor, I told you
That
I
is
did.
wrong. That is just nothing else but wrong.
Council Martin.
If I could, I'd like to thank Mr. Krieger for his service. As this discussion is supposed to be about his confirmation, I think, but given the way it's went, I have some thoughts that I'd like to offer. First, you know, it's no secret that Mr. Krieger was an applicant to this job. I had hoped when he wasn't confirmed or appointed to the school committee that he'd consider, you know, coming forward for this position, and I'm glad to hear he did. The agendas get emailed to all of us and to many members of the public at around 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Sometimes I look at those, sometimes I don't. You know, so it depends what I'm doing in the course of the day, but it's not uncommon. It's happened in the past where I'd get a call from a member of the media about an agenda item before I've seen the agenda. But it's out there. It's available for me if I want it. Sometimes I have a chance to check it, and sometimes I don't. It doesn't defy logic to me at all that something could have been written about Mr. Krieger. We all had his resume a month or so ago, and if something's ready to go when he gets appointed, then that's what reporters do. Apparently that's what bloggers do. I don't really make too much of a habit of reading blogs by anybody, but it doesn't shock me that in the kind of instantaneous age we're in, that could happen. It also doesn't shock me that somebody who's walking in and out of City Hall for an interview might be seen by somebody who tells somebody else. That's happened to me here too. You know, I made an innocent inquiry in the Election Commission office a few years ago and had my phone lighting up about what new office I was running for because I was seen coming out of the Election Commission. So people come in and out of this building who aren't typically in and out of a particular office are going to sometimes be noticed by other people. Now, that's not to defend the mayor or the manager, but I think they know their roles. I think they know that we're supposed to get the information first. I think they make very good efforts to do that through the electronic communications that we have available to us these days. And I think it's a little bit disingenuous for some members of this council to talk about sharing information when we've had a half-hour discussion earlier tonight about something not on the agenda, but an anonymous letter that I've never seen, most of us have never seen, and yet drove the discussion here for half an hour. And now we're having another discussion off the point of Mr. Krieger's appointment about, again, something that the vast majority of us know nothing about. Not on the agenda.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the appointment of Mr. Krieger?
Yeah.
Councilor Elliott.
Whoa, here. Council Martin. Maybe you didn't get the letter, but I know you got emails because people's names were on it. First and foremost. And secondly, I had no idea Mr. Krieger was interested in this job until I saw the agenda. Maybe you did. Apparently you did. You said you knew he was interested. I had no idea until I saw it on this agenda. So let's not call people disingenuous when Maybe you must have had a conversation with the manager about it. But until I saw this nomination on this agenda, I had no idea.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to reiterate, my comments had nothing to do with what was in the blog or the successful candidates who were here or when they were announced. My comments have to do with the candidate that was not successful and that came here for the interview with you for the position, expecting that there was going to be a level of confidentiality. And right after that, they get a call from a blogger. It wasn't in the blog. They get a telephone call from the blogger discussing the merits of their candidacy. That's wrong for that to happen. And at that point, there were only 3 people. Now, you know, I suppose it could possibly be that when that candidate was leaving City Hall, that blogger saw them and then went to a phone booth if they could find one and called them up and to discuss it then, or to use their cell phone. But I don't think that's the way it happened. I just don't, I don't like it.
Well, I can assure you, Counselor, that I've said on 3 or 4 occasions now that it didn't come from me, and I stand by that.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nuwan.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Thank you, Mr. Krieger.
I want to thank the city council for the confidence that they're showing in me, and I hope to rise up to the confidence that you've established for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have the communication, appoint Eric Faulkner to the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Faulkner's here, and just by way of a background, he's an employee at Nobis Engineering. He's got a background in music. He's a veteran. He was actually he submitted his resume, and I interviewed him for the potential for the veterans slot. Although his name wasn't put forward by the Veterans Council, we still sat down, had a very enjoyable interview, and I felt that he'd be a good addition to the Auditorium Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, since we're into a communication with the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, I have a few concerns as it relates to the Board of Trustees, to the auditorium, as this gentleman will soon be, I'm hoping, put into this group. This council is aware that a new RFP that went out for bid for a new management company to oversee the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, and there was a format change, and it's quite different from the one in place for the past 25 years. Would you say that would be true, Mr. Manager?
It provides some different opportunities for us, different
opportunities, yes. Did you notify the format changes to any of the members of the Board of Trustees with the auditorium?
I do not believe so. That was done in our purchasing office. We put that together. I have been in touch with the chairman of the Board of Trustees following that, and we've discussed it in the role of the trustees in reviewing that moving forward.
Okay, and I'm not saying that the format changes and your new approach to it is wrong. I'm not saying that at all.
Right.
But I'm understanding that the chairman, Jim O'Donnell, called you, Mr. Manager, and got a copy of the RFP, but that was only after he had heard about it from another source, and bids already had gone out, and the contract format was already changed. So I'm asking, who put the RFP change format together? Who put this?
Well, it was done out of my office, out of the purchasing office under my direction.
Purchasing, Michael Vaughn?
Yes.
He put this together. And how did he go about the changes? What made him decide on the changes? You instructed him
Correct.
what you wanted.
It's a very flexible document. It does abide, if you recall, the existing agreement was bid out 8 or 9 years ago on a 5-year agreement. Midway through, about 2 years into that, the then city manager extended it by 3 years. So it's essentially been in place for 8 years now. I'm not sure of how it was bid out before. That isn't entirely clear, but it is being bid out under Chapter 30B, whereby there's a price component and there's a non-price component. We're looking for the bidders, and we've had a number of people interested in bidding on it. Give us their own thoughts on how it could be set up in the way that's most beneficial to the city.
You're telling me that you suspect there are many bidders that are bidding on this?
I believe we have right now, I believe, 4 or 5 companies that have expressed interest.
I'm surprised because the way that the format has been changed, it looks like the search is only limited to 1 bid, but that's just talk, so I'm just asking you that. Was there any input from the Board of Trustees in this contract that has gone out?
Not at this point, but we've had discussions about some things that they've seen that this can be addended and amended as it goes through the process. That, in fact, typically happens in a bidding process.
Because the bid went out before any of the trustees seen it, so how could they have had any input into this?
They can do it after the fact.
They can do it after the fact.
We needed to get it out on the street so that we could ensure that the auditorium was, still in operation come July 1st.
Well, maybe it's just me, but I would think that as a matter of courtesy, that the Board of Trustees would have been kept abreast as to what was about to occur. And I would have thought as well that an RFP could also have input from the very board that has been familiar with the surroundings and the workings of the auditorium for so many years that they've been on it. So in my opinion, it seems to me that the Board of Trustees were ignored. And that's my opinion. I have a right to my opinion, and that's how I feel about it. I don't know what's in the contract, but I know that the $2 from every sale of each ticket was collected as a facility fee and placed in a capital improvement account for repairs to the magnificent building that's there. Will this new contract allow that to happen, or will this money be sent into this general fund? Where are we going with that?
That would still go towards the capital. In fact, we have, at the request of the trustees who are responsible for sort of the overall maintenance, that's their primary responsibility under the statute. They have come to us with proposals, and they've been brought to the council. There are more that are being prepared to bring to the council for improvements to that building, and our goal is to have that paid by that fee. The difference that we have in the terms of the operation is that, there was quite a bit of discussion back in 2008, 9, regarding the Tsongas Arena, now the Tsongas Center, and the concerns and objections to the fact that it was costing the city some $500,000 to $750,000 a year in subsidy. What many of the residents apparently aren't familiar with is that the auditorium costs $320,000 to $400,000 a year in operating subsidy, and our goal is to eliminate that. So that it pays for itself.
Well, you understand that a lot of times this management team that's in place now put up a lot of their own money, and at times the acts aren't as well profiting as they suspect, so they lose money at times on this.
Well, I think that and I think that they've certainly, Mill City Management has certainly done a good job with elements of the management of that, but that's one of the issues that what we're looking at here is they're playing multiple roles. They're playing managers, booking agents, concessions, and security, what we're looking at, and they're subsidized to do that, what we're looking at is to see, and they've done a great job in bringing life back to a very significant building, but what we'd like to see is if we can have a company come in similar to the way that the Songus is now operated, that in other facilities, whereby someone comes in and they do it for where they actually pay the city, or they at least do it for minimal cost.
And I'm not saying that your approach is a bad move. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we take the time to advertise and ask people to step forward, such as this gentleman, who perhaps will find out that you have many others on that board of trustees that have been there so many years and have so much knowledge, and yet we never tapped into their input as to putting together a contract, like what should we be putting in this? And that made me feel like they've been slighted. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I like to gather people around and say, gee, you have some expertise in this. It's not all about what you say, Mr. Manager. It's about what are people that are involved with it on a day-to-day basis. What do they think? What should benefit the city that we could put in this contract for our own benefit? I don't know. That's what I'm just taking out of this whole conversation here. Okay. And I wish that they would have been included. I mean, they spend their time coming in to board meetings and this and that, and then we completely ignore their input. And that's all I'm trying to say. Okay. And that's my criticism, not to be mean, okay, but just to tell you that this is the way it should have been, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's my opinion, and I just thought I'd vent it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Any further discussion of the appointment of Eric Faulkner to this board? Roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Madonza.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner.
I'd just like to say thank you to the city manager for appointing me and to all of you on the council for affirming his choice. And I look forward to making it a worthwhile choice.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have a communication to reappoint Crystal Arnott to the Animal Advisory Committee. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Laurie. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Madonza.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you. I look forward to continuing my work with the committee and upholding public safety regarding animals, as well as enforcing some more community education for responsible pet ownership to get more compliance for all of the ordinances regarding animals in the city. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a communication, the appointment of Samkan C. Kun to the Lowell Housing Authority. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, as I think everyone knows, I made the decision to make a change in the Housing Authority. Walter Flynn has served, Buddy Flynn has served for a number of years, but I made the decision to make a change this year. Mr. Flynn offered to stay on, but also offered to step down if I felt that that was in the city's best interest to give someone else an opportunity to serve, and in particular to seek some increased diversity on the Lowell Housing Authority. After interviewing a couple of candidates, I made the decision who had applied for it. I made the decision to appoint Samkan Kun. As you know, Mr. Kun is an important member of the Southeast Asian Cambodian community, as well as serves an important role at the Middlesex Community College and at the high school with working with our youth, first-generation youth, which is an issue that the Housing Authority has made as a priority. And so that is why I've brought this to you tonight.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, the Housing Authority did a 132-unit renovation without pulling permits or getting occupancy permits. And then they had to go through a lengthy and costly process to bring this into compliance. Mr. Kuhn has been with the Temple project since the beginning, and we just learned it's racked up 30 violations. Even though he says he was there to correct the issues, one of the first letters about violations was sent to him. And now we just see the project was rejected completely by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. He has made comments that have been troubling to me, that he was not happy with the agency trying to bring this project into compliance. He said, look, and I quote, "We believe the work we want perform complies with the state and local regulations, but it's being unfairly and unnecessarily regulated by the commission." That's a concern. And Mr. Kuhn wrote, "Does everyone who cuts weeds and trees within the floodplain file with the commission? We don't think so. We believe the commissioners mean well, but they are being pressured by neighbors who simply do not want to see the project move forward." Again, 30 violations, Mr. Manager. Look, I think the LHA board needs a board member who will help uphold the law and not ignore it. I think it would send the wrong message about how serious we take our wetlands and our building regulations. So I'm not going to support this nomination for those reasons. Thank you.
Council Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too hold the same opinion, and I really feel bad that the city manager would bring a name forward with people that would embarrass someone, and I feel horrible to think that someone's standing here that I can't support, but I too have the same feeling about the Lowell Housing Authority, and they need someone in there that will follow the law and the rules and not be oblivious to what's going on. This isn't about Southeast Asian. I hope to God that it doesn't turn that way. It's about the principle of putting someone in there that should be qualified to make the right decisions. I don't have anything against this person, absolutely not. It isn't for any ethnic reasons. God knows that I attend all kind of services for many types of people. So this is not about a nationality or whatever. Bunrith Latch just retired from the auditorium board. You couldn't ask for a better person, and that would have been a tremendous choice at that time. But this particular issue, when it comes to the Lowell Housing Authority, and you need to do the right thing, and you can't violate the law, and there's a record that's preceding this name that I just can't support, and it breaks my heart to do that, and I'm troubled by the fact that you would bring this name up and have me have to embarrass someone, and I feel bad. I like the individual, but not for this particular position. I'm sorry.
Councilman Donza.
I too had to pause on this nomination because of this gentleman is the public face of an organization that has racked up a lot of violations regarding our city ordinances along with state environmental protection laws and regulations. And I am aware that they have since complied with all of them. I believe that as of November, they are in compliance with all the regulations, but still, for over a year, those violations were in place, and now the DEP has denied the project in its entirety, which means those violations were definitely valid at the time. So I cannot support the nomination because of this record of violation.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this appointment?
Mr. Mayor.
Council,
Go ahead.
Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you recall that at the last meeting of last year, I urged the manager to pay attention to diversity in his appointments. I had a motion on requesting that he fill all of the vacancies that there are on the several boards and to reappoint or appoint new people for the holdover positions on those boards. And to do that with an eye towards diversity. However, I've never met this candidate but given the information that I have, I cannot be confident in supporting him. So I will not be voting in the affirmative on this position.
Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I don't know the applicant. I look at the application and you look at the resume, but then I look at the violations I guess over the past year or so, and it does lead to some concern. You're going to go on to a public housing. Councilor Elliott talked earlier about some of the problems in the past. And when we put people on boards, it should be for oversight. I'm not that familiar with the situation in Pawtuckaville. I don't know of any positives or just the negatives, and unfortunately the positives never get really published or talked about. But I did see the paper, the article in the paper, and the number of violations, and it does lead to a concern, and it concerns me as a counselor when an article is run in the paper with that many violations, and you have to vote to appoint. And I don't know the individual. It's just that one concern, and I'm right now I really have to lean to turning the appointment down. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Noon.
I commend the managers in trying to do what Councilor Kennedy asked him to do, to fill all the vacancy on board and commission with diversity, qualified diversity, and he tried to do just that. However, giving a number of earned, like other council, I too received corresponding from citizens through email, raised some concern and issues. Given that, I was unable to get back to them to try to find out exactly what those concerns and issues are. I know that some council raised some of the issues and concerns tonight. If would be all right with the councilor, that I would like to see if we can put off this for a week or two to get opportunity for councils to, or for myself at least, to maybe communicate with those concerned, the citizens, as to Mr. Kuhn's candidacy to the Lowell Housing Authority. That said, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
A motion by Councilor Noon to delay by a week or two. Councilor Kennedy.
I'd like to offer a substitute motion that the matter be referred back to the city manager.
Okay. Substitute motion by Councilor Kennedy. That the appointment be referred back to the city manager.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Elliott.
Through you to the city solicitor, isn't the process the confirmation either voter up or down?
Madam Solicitor.
That if the council were to take action on it tonight, then the vote would be an up or down vote.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I'm not going to support the motion to delay. Information's presented to us. We should just vote it up or we should vote it down. That's what we're here for. That's what we're to do our jobs for.
The motion is actually as substituted by Councilor Kennedy to refer back to the city manager. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Lowry.
There is a reference to hold the confirmation off 1 week. Last January, there was a confirmation appointment to the LHA again. Mr. Green and there was a motion made on this floor to, I think, hold it up 1 week. And we did approve that, to hold it up a week. Just for reference, there has been times on this council since I've been here that an appointment was put off, and it was put off for a week, and I believe it was, again, the LHA appointment in January. Thank you.
Councilor Kennedy.
Let me just be clear. My motion is not meant to delay this appointment. My motion is meant to refer back to the city manager in order that he can reconsider the appointment for a person to the Housing Authority.
Does everyone understand the motion? Roll call.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
No.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have reports, subcommittee reports, the Finance Subcommittee of January 8th. Councilor Mendonça.
Yes. The Finance Subcommittee met this evening at, scheduled at 5:45. We actually started a few minutes after that. Present were myself, Councilor Elliott, Councilor Martin. Also present were Councilors Mercier, Mayor Murphy, Councilor Noon, the city manager, Mr. Moses, along with representatives from Colonial Power that is implementing this program for us, Mr. Murphy and Mr. Capanano. They gave a brief presentation on the status of the project. They have moved forward. The next step is to have hearings before public utilities at the state level, and that's going to take place shortly within the next week or two. And they will proceed forward. They were looking for any input from the subcommittee as to anything they could do to improve the process. Basically, this program allows the residents of the city, if they haven't already chosen their own power provider, that is a supplier. It's always National Grid that provides the wires and the electricity into the home, but the actual kilowatt hours that they'll receive will come from a supplier that would be selected by this program, and by law would have to be less than they would pay as a basic rate through National Grid. By proceeding with this program, the city provides the means by which they can select a provider that's less than National Grid and provide savings. It wouldn't be great savings, but still nevertheless savings to the residents. If we're unable to do that, then the law would not allow us to proceed. So there is a small chance that the bids are not lower, in which case we wouldn't proceed. But if we did, there would be savings to the residents that could participate. Residents will always have the option to opt out. And there were questions provided to the vendor as to how the program would take place, including why we did not, there's one community that suspended the program for a while, that community being Marlboro, but it was explained that the reason they had suspended the program is because the bidders they had at the time were not actually lower than what they could receive as a basic rate, and decided to suspend it rather than proceed, but have done that on 2 occasions, but are still supportive of the program. So with that update, we're still continuing to proceed, and hopefully we will be able to provide our residents with savings on their electric power moving forward, and without the residents needing to do anything on their own. They will receive information from this vendor in the mail regarding the program and what their options are. So if they do wish to proceed with their own electric supplier selection or to opt out of this program, it should be clearly stated in that communication. So that is a report of progress. Maybe the other members of the subcommittee wish to add to the report.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, that was a very good report. but we do want to notify the public through information and make them aware of what will happen and be more informative, perhaps at the senior center, and perhaps to the neighborhood groups, to get the word out as to what's going to take place and what their options are, what they could do nothing and just take the somewhat of a rate discount, or opt out and go back to where they were. But it'll be an informational process by which we communicate with the public to let them be aware of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress. So moved by Council Mercia, second by Council Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Rules Subcommittee of January 8th. Council Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Rules Committee met this evening to discuss whether or not to proceed with the special meetings for calendar year 2013. The subcommittee has a recommendation. I think it would probably be more prudent to just put it on the agenda and have it be voted on next Tuesday rather than to take that up this evening. So unless there's any objection, I'll just keep the report short and say that there'll be something in the agenda on Friday.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Councilor Mercia.
I'd at least like to know what the recommendation from the committee is.
Mr. Mayor, the compromise recommendation from the committee is that we would not substitute the special meetings for any city council meetings. So the city council meetings would still take place on every Tuesday. But on the last Tuesday of every month, there would be a separate meeting that would be before the city council meeting. And at that time, the full council would have oversight over those departments. The number of meetings that we have and the time is set is something that probably should be discussed next week, because we were talking about maybe having them at 5 o'clock, which may be too early for people to do. Maybe not, but I'd rather just leave it for next week so that people have time to deliberate and think about how they want to vote on it next week.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report?
Accept
a
the
motion
report.
to accept it as a report of progress. So moved by Council Mercia, second by Council Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have
Mayor Murphy.
Council Mendonça.
Just a quick, there was a matter regarding Health Trust Fund and the remaining funds in there and what to do with them. The manager has instructed me that he should have information towards the end of this month, so I'll schedule a subcommittee meeting to discuss that in early February.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Solicitor.
Just a couple of quick things on the amendment of the rules. Under Rule 33 of your rules, the actual amendment to the rule couldn't be voted on next week because the council would need the actual written rule 1 week prior to the rule being acted on. But I suppose you actually did give the report. The other stipulation in terms of moving it forward is provided further that the Committee on Rules has reported on the changes. So I think, at least in responding to Councilor Mercier, you've reported on the change. But if we have it on the agenda next week, there'll be time to debate it, get it, and then it will actually be voted on the following week.
Thank you. Next, we have under general petitions, miscellaneous petition by Roberta Butler, Lowell, Massachusetts, requests a handicap parking sign. Entertain a motion to refer to the traffic engineer.
So moved.
So moved by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Mercia. Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Miscellaneous petition by Tina G. Degree, Lowell, Massachusetts, addressed the City Council regarding consumers' right to choose their own cable company. Is Ms. Degree here? Seeing that she's, Council Martin.
I move that we accept the communication, place on file, but this really has to do with a request that we bring FiOS from Verizon into the city so that there would be some competition with Comcast. And this is an issue that's been discussed here many times. The city would love to do that. Our contract with Comcast is not exclusive. If Verizon is willing to bring Fios, we're happy to have them. They're just not expanding Fios in Massachusetts, at least in cities right now. So we're kind of stuck here, but we all, I think, share the sentiment of this petition. And we do what we can, but if they don't want to come, they don't want to come.
Second the motion.
Motion to accept and place on file by Council Martin, second by Council Kennedy. Mr. Manager?
Just, Mr. Mayor, and to the council, that's my assumption is that this is, I don't know, Council, if you're more familiar with this petition, but that was sort of my reading of it as well, and I think you highlighted both myself, I think the council has sent correspondence, but I know I've sent several pieces of correspondence and spoken to Verizon about this. I know that former manager Cox did as well. And it is the case that Verizon has chosen not to roll out Fios in any of the cities really across Massachusetts, certainly not the larger ones. But I do understand that there may be an issue over on Western Ave too, related to cable service with some crossing rights that they're working on. So that could have something to do with this, and we are working to, we've learned of that recently, and we're trying to work on this as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, miscellaneous petition by Attorney George Eliades Jr. for Cherish Trust. Request to amend the zoning code by adding additional use under Article 12, Table of Uses 12.3. Entertain a motion to refer to the Law Department. So moved by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Laurie. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have utility petitions. Petition by National Grid to install underground electric conduits on Market Street. Entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing on January 22nd, 2013 at 7 p.m. So moved by Council Leahy, seconded by Council Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Under motions, we have motion by Council Leahy. Request the city manager have traffic engineer prepare a report regarding the lights at the intersection of Middlesex and Wood Streets. Seconded by Council Mendonça. Council Leahy.
Thank you very much. The motion basically speaks for itself. We've received a few emails. If there's anything we can do to alleviate the congestion or the traffic signal coordination, I know that there's been discussion going on with the petition for the new charter school, but I saw in the paper that that was delayed, and I know that might have an effect with that. We desperately need a new bridge. That has a big part to do. But any suggestions, any work we can do would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Councilor, we'll follow up with a report, and I think we've also already sort of prepared something on this. I know that Councilor Elliott and I have gone back and forth on this because he received an email from a resident, and I believe the council was copied on that, but I can't recall now. But we are looking to, the problem that we have out there is that the signals aren't working because of the loop detectors. In order for us to deal with the loop detectors, we'd have to wait until the spring to rip those out. And there's always the risk that they're going to break again. And so what we're looking to do is install a different type of technology that can be mounted above that can monitor traffic and make the lights change. And that's going through the bidding process right now. So hopefully by February we'll have something done on that, but we'll get a full report to the council on that.
Can I just follow up
Council Leahy.
quickly on that? It was brought to my attention too, and I forgot to mention this. On the Wood Street side, you have 2 lanes going into one. Maybe we could have the traffic engineer just look at it so the signage is clearer, so people know, everybody move up in 2 lanes and then merge towards, as you get onto the bridge versus everybody merging at the light. So instead of having a single line of traffic for whatever it is, 100 feet, you need to have 2 lanes and then merge. That may alleviate some congestion at the...
Thank you. Council Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I've talked to the gentleman, and I'm sure in Pawtuckaville that Councilor Leahy talked to. The problem on that bridge right now is the traffic sits on the bridge. while we're waiting for the lights, would there be any opportunity to have a police officer on one side of the bridge directing traffic to keep the traffic off that bridge during the peak hours, maybe an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half at night? What happens is those lights, and again, we know that there's an electrical problem out there, but for example, if I'm, during the morning, if I'm coming from Pawtuckaville over the Brook Bridge, and those lights are holding up traffic, that bridge just stalls. If we could, and again, I don't know what the budget is, but if an officer was there in the morning getting the traffic over, at night, if he's on the other side of the river, as the traffic is coming up from Wood Street, waving it on, at least it empties the bridge, and it gets that traffic up on the bridge for the next shot.
Mr. Manager.
We can certainly look at that, Councilor. Generally, I will tell you that police officers, particularly in a complex situation like that, really aren't able to deal with the problem. And I think that the chief would tell you the same thing. It's a very complex set of intersections, and while they can pull people off one, they quickly hit another light on the other side up at Middlesex, and so they're sort of limited. And what generally happens is police do an amazing and outstanding job for us as a city, but it just becomes overwhelming for them to do that. And the history or the experience of using police officers in that way has been more problematic than solution. And not only there, but at other intersections here and in other communities as well. And lights, really, they can be coordinated and timed, and whereas a police officer doesn't have that. But we can take a look at it and see if there's something that could be done to help that
Just
along.
anything to relieve that situation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott and then Councilor Mercier.
Thank you. I think there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, Mr. Manager, as we did identify those loops on the Brunswick side was broken, so in the evening, and that will usher more traffic through, but, and I know this is looking down the road a little bit, but before we know it, it'll be here. We got the major problem that we'll be faced with is, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Mr. Marchand knows, that University Bridge has to be shut down in the near future in order for the new bridge to be finished. And just knowing that when we lose a bridge, traffic's a nightmare. It's a nightmare now, but so is there some plan to get, and I know this is a little bit far from the motion, but before we know it, and I think it's the summer, is it not, Mr. Manager, that they're going to close a bridge?
Just for the last information I have on that, because it was back and forth, the last information I have on that is there's one small section of the bridge that has to be done, so there's the possibility, it's a pretty good possibility, that it may have to be closed for a week or two in the summer. That's good because it's the lightest time for us, and as we get closer to that, if that is the case, there's one small section on this easterly or southerly side of the bridge that may need to be worked on. If that's the case, we'll put contingency plans in place to deal with that. Similar to the way we did with the University Ave Bridge when we had to close before, and other bridges that we've had to do that
I
with.
thought it was long that is really,
I think
that's
it's
great
very
news that
short.
it's only a week or two, because I thought it was going to be a greater length of time, but okay.
I think that's the case, and we'll keep the council up to date.
Great. Just follow up. Do you have any idea, Mr. Manager, when we're not going to wait for the loops, Adam?
No.
Mr. Beck, you're going to go through some new technology. Any idea what it has to go out to bid?
It has to go out to bid. I think we're looking mid-February. Is that correct, Adam?
Yes, we actually just spoke with the traffic engineer today, and he has completed the specifications for the video detection system that will substitute for the loop detectors on the northern end, the Pawtuckettville end of the Rourke Bridge, where what's been happening out there is that the loop detectors in the left turn lanes are not functioning, and as a result, they're giving the full amount of time to the left turn lanes, even when there isn't that much traffic wanting to use it, and by giving that time to the left turn lanes, it's taking it from all the other approaches where there's too much traffic. So what we're doing is we're going to be installing a video detection system in place of the loop detectors that will perform the same function of when a particular approach is clear, will give the time to some other approach that is not clear on the bridge. It will not be a panacea. It will not make that area perfect. There will still be delays, but they will be better than it is now. We have to put it out to bid. We then have to contract for it, and then the work itself has to take place. The work itself will be the shortest of those three things probably, but we should have it certainly done by the, I think it's safe to say by the end of the winter.
Great. No, that's good news. Anything that will help that area is a benefit, a plus, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in the meantime, I ask again, why can't the university police help us out, cooperate and help us out?
Well, I think, Council, the same applies to the university police as the Lowell police. Police officers aren't, humans simply aren't able to coordinate all of that because they can't coordinate with the other intersections, and the result is actually more of a mess than it is a solution.
Well, it seems that the Lowell police can get people in and out of the Songus Arena when we have a huge crowd. I don't know why they can't do it in that degree down in that section. You know, you just move people along and, you know, you coordinate it and get them out fast. I don't know why we...
Well, actually, what's happening there is that you with the Songus, what we do is if we have large crowds, we don't do it all of the time. We do have, it's actually a very, compared to what goes through there, it's a small number, and it's police at every single intersection along the way to clear out the whole thing. So we would have to dedicate a number of police officers to do that for a long period of time in the morning to do that. And it simply isn't a practical solution.
Any further discussion? Councilman Donza.
Yeah, just a quick question about the new system is, I know that what they did on Long Dutton Street, they're GPS timing enabled.
Right.
Is this a possibility, and is Wood Street prepared for something like that?
Mr. Bakey.
The system that was installed on Dutton Street, the function and purpose of that is to coordinate multiple intersections. And that allows traffic flow in a sort of single direction along a corridor to be more efficient. One of the problems, a significant contributor to the problems that we're experiencing around the Rourke Bridge area is while the traffic volumes that are trying to cross the bridge and also sort of continue in the corridor of Wood Street are very significant, the traffic volumes trying to cross that corridor on Middlesex Street, Princeton Boulevard, Westford Street, et cetera, are also very significant. So as a result, one of the problems that you have, and this actually speaks to the problem with police details and the difference between what happens at the end of the Songus Arena events as well, is you're not trying to coordinate just a single stream of traffic in a single direction, but in fact you have multiple directions where there's heavy volumes that actually exceed the capacity of the roadways at several intersections along there. So it is conceivable that there is some coordination technology that might help a bit, but I don't think you would see the same level of results that we've seen along the Dutton Street corridor in terms of coordination because of that complexity. The light at the end of the tunnel, and it is a very long tunnel, is that we do have, thanks to some funding that then Congressman Meehan was able to secure, we do have a contract that is actually through the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments where VHB has been hired to really study the entire corridor as well as the bridge and make recommendations for really long-term fixes out there. Those will, of course, all require significant appropriation, significant with respect to the bridge, a significant environmental permitting process, and so forth. But I think it's quite clear that that's an area that needs long-term solutions. We can continue to do the small things that we can do, and we will, to make it a little bit less bad, but we really do need a more long-term plan. And the hope is that as a result of that study, we will have some good recommendations and we'll all be able to work together to try to advance the Mass DOT and the Regional Planning Agency as well.
Hey, you got to my second question before I asked it, which is good, which is the NIMCOG. So I was going to ask that we coordinate with NIMCOG because they have the long-term solution, which is the bridge and its replacement. I know you mentioned it as long-term, but they actually mentioned it as shorter term was doing signalization that may help. And along that corridor, it is mainly northbound in the afternoons towards Pawtucketville and southbound in the mornings towards Route 3. And I know there's a lot of cross-traffic, but I just thought that if the intersection had the capability of being programmed by time so that they could change the amount of time they give to each direction based on whether it's afternoon or morning, that might be helpful, and the GPS timing capability would do that. So that's what I was really asking, is if it had that capability so that we could do time of day timings that could be changed from being a standard timing all day long.
I think
and just having the detectors otherwise.
I think the VHB analysis will help answer those questions for us. I mean, the simple answer is yes, of course it's possible. The question is, how much equipment do you need to replace, at what cost to do it?
Well, my immediate question was if the equipment being considered had that capability or not, because if it doesn't, we'd still have a longer term solution maybe that NIMCOG could address.
Yeah, it's actually two different things. The equipment that we're talking about with respect to the video detection is actually essentially video cameras that look at the lanes and determine if there are cars in them. The coordination equipment that we've installed on Dutton Street is actually a system that talks to the computer that controls the lights and then talks basically up to the satellites to get GPS timing, so that each of those controllers is basically coordinated with a GPS set time, which is basically it's a different technology. It's a different little black box that does that. And again, I can't stand before you and know for sure whether all the controllers in that corridor are even ready to accept that technology. If they're not, the controller would have to be replaced, as well as purchasing the GPS coordinator. And all of that research, however, is being done as part of the VHB study. So it's quite likely that what will come out of that may be some additional short-term measures, perhaps including that one, that can be done to improve things, as well as getting us sort of set on the path toward what will hopefully be a more permanent improvements.
Okay, well, at least we're getting some solution, but it's going to take some time to get the long-term solution in place, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Just very quickly, we're going to have a transportation subcommittee meeting on January 22nd, and if you would like, I could always invite NEMCOG. As far as the long-term solution for the Rourke Bridge, I'm on the committee here with Jerry Frechette from Lowell, and the last month or 2 months ago, Chelmsford came into the picture of putting the bridge in Vinyl Square. Now, we're going to have a meeting in January, and I know there'll be another public meeting, I think it's probably Lowell General this time again in February, early in February, and I urge everyone to attend. But that came out of the blue at the last meeting. We were sitting there, no one was more surprised than the representatives from the town of Chelmsford to hear they were looking at Vinyl Square. So, who knows?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Laurie, apparently unhappy with the nice weather. Have city manager have proper department explore the possibility of purchasing a snowmaking machine. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Laurie.
I'm going to take credit for the nice weather. Last year I asked for ice skating, and we had the mildest winter in years. Now I'm bringing up snowmaking machines, and we're going back in the 50s this weekend. But, seriously, I think it's a good investment for the city. It doesn't have to be new. There's a lot of used equipment out there from the ski resorts. But I think it would increase the quality of life in the city. The last week of December, when it was cold, I went by Shed Park. The snow was almost gone. These families are up in these parks on the weekends and during the week and during February vacation. And anything we can do to really enhance the parks, I think, for the people in the city. I look at the South Common. When I grew up there, that was a great place to go sledding, tobogganing. They used to freeze the bottom even. You can go skating. But I think it gives the parents in the city a real opportunity to spend some time with their children on the weekends. If we don't have a lot of snow this year and the weather's cold enough, at least we can have some facilities for the families. I think we could probably use it in a couple of weeks for the Winterfest. I don't know what we spent last year. You know, and a couple of weeks ago, right before Christmas, I picked up the Lowell Sun, and I saw, at least my present from the Lowell Sun was not only the adult recreational park, but a copy of the budget. So I don't know if they think I'm spending a little bit too much, but, you know, with this motion, we can not only enhance the parks and recreation and enhance the family life in Lowell, but I can keep the members of the media gainfully employed and give them job security over there at the same time.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying, Councilor Elliott.
Councilor Laurie, I've supported your adult parks, your water parks. I guess my question, of all the things, and this is just my personal opinion, of all the things I don't want to see is more snow. But on a serious note, how much are we talking about for a snowmaking machine?
I think a couple $1,000, few $1,000s. The issue, I think I have to do some. I don't know of any community that does this, so I have to find someone that does this. I know that the ski areas, they obviously make snow, and one of the big issues that they have is, you can't just put down a certain amount. You have to build a base up over time, and there's a lot that goes into it. You know, the Neshoba, which is nearby, has a number of snow guns that they use in order to do their hills. I don't know enough about snowmaking machines, so we'll have to look into that.
Okay. And it's a personal preference. I'm going to support the motion to get more information back, but I just don't know.
Yeah, we can see what other communities. There might be some other communities that do this, and we can find out.
Actually, I think the good thing here is, you go to Shed Park and the kids are sledding, and they have those things in front of the trees. And I think by doing things like this, we can isolate the areas we want for recreational facilities in the city, make them safer. But then again, we have a large population of children in the city. We have how many schools? And I think, it's just my opinion anyway, anything that we can do to enhance the quality of life and keep the families in the city, give them an opportunity to do something and stay here, it's always a plus.
Councilman Johnson.
I have no objection to getting more information, but I quite frankly see it as a huge expense, and I don't really see the benefit of it to the residents of Lowell and the climate that we have here, because the cost of the machine is just the beginning. We have to operate it, and someone has to do it, and we have to maintain it. And I think we'll be spending a lot more maintaining it than we're actually using it because of the lack of the ability to use it. We don't have a mountain here, and the snow just won't last. We can see that by what's outside. I really don't see the utility of it or the benefit of spending the money in this way when we have other things like the lights throughout the city and intersections where we need to improve traffic. So I think there are other priorities that we need to spend the money on if we do spend the money at all.
Any further discussion? Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just want to say that maybe it isn't financially feasible. I mean, in addition to having the snow machine, you have to have a technician that's going to, redirect the machine so that the snow is spread out. It's pretty involved. At the same time, that doesn't make it a bad idea, and maybe it can be quite economical, and maybe there's just one or two places where we could do this. But it seems to me that if it's not cost prohibitive, that it's maybe worth a try. And I think that this is an idea that's a little bit different, but nevertheless, it's a new idea and not necessarily a bad one. I mean, if you can do anything that you can do to make the winter go more quickly, is a good thing. And so if this will help make the winter go more quickly for a lot of people in the city, particularly kids, then that's a good thing.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have motion by Councilor Laurie. Request the city manager have Lowell Police Department review safety procedures and evaluate needs for Lowell Public Schools and report to the council with findings. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. I think this speaks for itself. A couple of weeks ago, I was in one of the public schools reading to the first and second graders, and when I was leaving, the principal grabbed me and said, you know, just pass on to the city manager how much we appreciate having a police officer come by. And I know there was a motion, I think, put in the school department similar to this, and they might bring in a firm to review. But looking at that, I'd like to have something from our police department and what the cost would be and their opinion, if they think, what they think we should be doing as we go down the road. I'd like to hear from the police chief, and that would probably be a report also, would be included with the findings from the school committee motion and what we're looking at, what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Mr. Manager.
The only addition I'd make to this, or a comment I would make to this, Mr. Mayor, is that putting a report like this together, I think, is a good idea, but also that the police have already scheduled a training session with our school employees to go over some of the procedures that should be followed or that they utilize. So that's already in the planning stages, but we can develop a more comprehensive report as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Laurie. Request the city manager have Lowell Police Department prepare a report regarding the incident in December at Bryan's Ivy Hall.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was while we had taken a break there for the holidays, an incident happened at Bryan's Ivy Hall. I hear different stories, what I read in the paper, and I just like a report from the police department on what happened. You know, and I look back at last year when we had Fortunatos and everything that went forward from there. But from this incident alone, when we get the report back, I think we need to look at downtown in a whole different manner. You know, 20 years ago, after 5 o'clock, you could walk through downtown and not see anyone till 5 the next morning when people were walking to work. Today we have a vibrant lifestyle down there. We have vibrant clubs. We have a lot of people living downtown. And I think when we get the report back and see what happens, I think the challenge for the city over the next 12 months, next couple of years, is how we've balanced the success we've had with the nightlife and the success we've really had with people moving downtown, buying condos, renting apartments. A lot of people, they enjoy downtown. I enjoy going for coffee in the morning down there. It's a whole different type of lifestyle. They get up, they go out, they see their neighbors at the coffee shop, and they come home from work, and there's a lot of nice clubs, a lot of nice places, restaurants they can go downtown. So the downtown has a lot to offer. But I think, you know, and I hear about this incident, but I think the challenge for us is to build on the positives that have going on downtown. The new businesses we have down there, the nightlife, the people living downtown. It's now a neighborhood. How do we balance it? And really, when I look at this, I look at the next year or 2 years and really trying to make everything work downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Excuse me. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Somewhat related, Mr. Manager. Do you know the status of the regulations, the new regulations or recommendations that the council put forward to the licensing commission? Has it been adopted? It seems like it's been forever, and that certainly would provide some benefit.
Through the mayor, I couldn't agree more. And I believe we discussed this back in December, thereabouts, that I copied the council on the transmittal of the regulations back to the License Commission with the new membership and asked them to take this up with the appointment of the third member tonight. I'm optimistic that they will be taken up in the very near future, because I couldn't agree more that that's what's really what's needed here is those regulations.
Mr. Manager, could you provide, I mean, I hope it's the near future, but we've been hearing that for quite some time. So is there some way for you to facilitate a meeting with the chairman or get some type of time frame as to, when they're going to take it up, when they're going to adopt it, when they're going to be implemented? I mean, I think it's important that, that we stay on this, and and I understand there's been some turnover, but
Right.
some significant problems downtown could and should be solved with the implementation of these regulations. And
I think we
Manager.
can, if I may, I think we can get, in communication with the chairman, get a sense of when they're going to be taken up. Obviously, they can't, until they review them, they can't tell us if they're going to be adopted. I'm hopeful that they will. But so we won't be able to know that or the enforcement, but I think I couldn't agree more that they need to be taken up.
all right, thank you.
Council Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. Mr. Manager, this is unrelated to the License Commission in the facilities, the nightclubs and places like that. If you could just, and I don't know, maybe I'm not supposed to make it in the form of a motion, but I was approached by different clubs, veterans clubs, the Plain Street, the VFW Club on Plain Street, the American Legion, the Dom Polski, the Polish American Veterans. These are veterans clubs. And if you could provide me with some sort of how they get a little bit of a discount, or they're telling me that the rules and regulations are so stringent with them that they're going to have to close their halls. And I don't know that I actually want to do that. And they said, we need a break. And then someone on the commission told me they do get a break. I don't know. So if you can have someone put together what breaks these clubs get that the regular liquor establishments and restaurants don't get, I need to know something like that. Do we have any
Mr.
idea?
Manager.
Counselor, I guess my question is, do you mean a financial break or do you mean a regulation break?
Well, probably both. A regulation break if they get it. Let's say permits are to regular establishments $50. I don't know. Do they pay $25?
I do believe, and I'll have to double check this, but I do believe there's a club license.
Okay, well.
As opposed to a regular license.
Okay, I need to.
We'll follow up on that.
Yes, if you
But in
could.
terms of the regulations, that's what's going to be taken up by the License Commission, and I don't believe there's anything that, would
I don't
be
know what they're
onerous to
looking
the-
for help.
Right.
But I have to know what they're getting as a discount or at a discounted permit that the other establishments aren't. I don't know the answer to that.
We'll get you the club license. I believe there's a club license fee that's less than the regular.
Okay, because they're asking, how can you help? How can we get some help here? So I don't know what we can do, but thank you.
Council Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had that same question last year when we went through this process. I know the clubs, nightclubs and things hold 150, 200 people. So don't the private clubs, so don't the golf courses, but they deal with members. To get in those doors, you have to be a member. With the clubs, it's, open to the public. People come in to see different entertainment acts. And I didn't know if there's a difference in a club license, a nightclub license, or if it's zoned by an area. But that was the hardship I saw, I thought, for some of the clubs. They may have 150, 200 people in there for an event, but they're all members or guest members, and I don't know if we could break down from there.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Council Mercier. Request the city manager add to the streetlight list, the poles located at 145 and 227 Gorham Street. Seconded by Councilman Donson. Council Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, 145 and 227 Gorham Street is the Lowell Housing Authority. It's Bishop Markham. The building manager called the city and follow the proper procedure, follow the proper steps. A request was submitted and followed through the eGov system or whatever, and still to this day, which is about maybe 2 months ago, nothing's happened, and asked if I would make this motion. And I'm wondering, I don't know why it wasn't followed, but do we not have, and these aren't Victorian lights, these are regular big lights. They're out and they need to be turned on. But I thought they were put on a list, and every Thursday that truck comes in or whatever and fixes them. If we could try to get these 2 poles to have lights, because this is the housing authority and it's an elderly complex and it's dark over there, and they're asking if we could have some help here.
Mr. Manager.
Counselor, I know that one of the problems out at that location is that there's a pole with no power. The power is out at the base, and it's on a work order with National Grid to energize that. So we've been double checking on that one to find out what that is. There are some other adjacent lights that are on a list for this Thursday.
Oh, okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie?
On that motion, the building between 145 and 227 is 183, where Council, I think Mercy is alluding to, and there's actually a crosswalk there with a light now that you can press. And I believe that was put there when I was delivering over there. I believe an individual got hit on the street. And I believe that's why that set of lights was put there for crosswalks. So it is dark there, and anything you could do to help. But I believe that's why they did have that set of lights put in in front of Santoro's. I believe someone did get hit. So.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. Just quickly, since we're mentioning lights, which is kind of related to this motion, over by the auditorium, when we have all these people crossing for the shows, it's pretty dark over there, so we should kind of look into some sort of overhang light or one of those special National Grid UMass Lowell crosswalks that are lit up, so that would be a big benefit over there. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Mercier. Request city manager provide update regarding the city implementation of the Darkness to Light Child Abuse Program. Seconded by Councilman Mendonça. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. Mr. Manager, I think you're working on that, right?
We actually have them coming into a department head meeting tomorrow morning.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. If Councilor Mendonça would take the chair, please.
Next, we have a motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager develop with input from council, school committee, and all departments an annual legislative program consistent with our strategic goals and objectives. Second by Councilor Mercier. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I've made this motion in the past, and it still speaks for itself.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion's carried. Mayor Murphy, if you'd resume the chair.
Thank you. Next, we have on the agenda executive session to consider the lease or acquisition of a small portion of real property, since public discussion of such negotiations may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the public body. Entertain a motion to go into executive session to adjourn.
Yes, from executive session.
From executive session.
Yes,
So moved by
moved.
Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Noon. Roll call, please.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Norm.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Councilor Leahy.
I'd just like to thank our guests for coming tonight. Maybe we should say thank you to the class, and I hope they picked up some good habits tonight. Thank you.
It's the UMass Community Psychology class, Erica Sanborn.